Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if people have an electronic version of the agenda in front of them, it's page 231.
And if you've got a paper copy,
231. Okay, so Dave's driving the presentation. Should be able to skip through, I think, the first slide, which again was Te Hui's. There we go, tick.
So just taking you through the slides then, the first one is around rail, and you'll see there that the increase in direct cost related to inflation rail is 112,000. We're proposing for both bus and rail a 10% fare increase for the 2026-2027 year, which when offset against modelled 1% decrease in patronage results in that increase in fare revenue. So that's aligned with the wider story about the private share target for next financial year, which, as we've said previously and is included in your reports, grows between the current financial year and the next financial year. This adjustment, based on our modelling, indicates that that's a desirable increase to achieve that target. The conversation about whether rail fares could increase more dramatically to either raise farebox recovery to a much higher level or to more broadly levels that you've seen and described as being achieved elsewhere in the country is a good conversation to have. We are doing some work ahead of national ticketing on the development of a fares policy for the region, and that's a job which we have to do both for national ticketing but also as part of the new regional public transport plan guidance. One of the proposals in that policy is to separate our current single fare zone structure at a regional level for all public transport into a model for bus and a model for rail. And the model for rail would then allow us to escalate those fares more dramatically to achieve the outcomes that you're indicating you're looking for us to get to. Proposed for this annual plan, though, is a fare increase consistent with the bus model at that 10% level.
So when would that kick in, Phil, that 10%?
Up until now, fare increases have kicked in on the 1st of July. We do network adjustments in February, March, and October each year. Our recommendation would be that we would adjust the fares from October so that we can do it as part of those network changes. Currently, we're doing 3 changes a year, 1 for fares and 2 for network. If we could move that to be in October annually, it would make it more efficient for us to make that change.
And that potential separate structure, buses, rail, when would we have an outcome from that then gives you the ability to work more on the rail side?
I think that's probably that process. I think that's an LTP discussion. Ideally, a long-term plan discussion. So this time next year, we could be talking about that.
Okay. Jen and Chris. Jen.
Thank you. Not that I understand a lot of where you're coming from there, Phil. In regards to, I recall James saying that one of your presentations that the fare for Te Huia could go up a bit. And I'm mindful we've made a decision previously about this 10%, but I'm keen to find, is the 10% the right number, or is it a different number necessarily? But one thing that I'm pretty clear on is that I would want it to be as soon as possible, because it was to kick in on say 1st of October. Our review of Te Huia is happening in well, till the end of December. And it's not very much time, and you're making a change right at the end. So I would advocate for a fair change as soon as possible. And I'm just not sure what the number is, but I would love it if it was a round number. And I know when you're doing percentages, you always end up with funny cents at the end. Just keen to explain that at some stage. Thanks.
Points noted. Chris?
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. And just really picking up on what Jen's saying, I'm totally in support of that, but I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive. And thank you, Angela, for getting Darren Ponter to present to us. I thought that was very useful. So we've got some oversight of how the interregional rail works in other areas and what fare box recovery is, which is significantly ours is at the present time. Coupling that with the increase in costs that are projected in our budgets and the gap, the subsidy gap, which is opening up in transport, which I'm not at all happy about, and I'm sure most ratepayers won't be happy about it in Hamilton City anyway, because they're the ones that carry the burden. And I'm encouraged to hear, Phil, that there is a review going on, but to me, we have committed ourselves in our earlier resolution to a continuation of the trial of Tahuya for another 12 months. Now, to me, a trial must be representative of what we believe is going to happen in real life. It's impossible for us to expect the ratepayers to continue to subsidise Tahuya to the current level that is happening. It's not sustainable. So I want to strike a fair balance between what's happening in Wellington, which is where we should be aspiring to get to, and I don't know how long it'll take us to get there, and where we are at the moment. And I'm suggesting that has to be not less than 50% fare box recovery, and we should be targeting higher. And I want to see that happen as part of this current trial period. Otherwise, it's not a trial. We're just kidding ourselves. So I'm happy to elaborate, but I've probably said all I need to say, and others can have their bit.
Any comments from the team around that, or you want to carry on with questions?
So perhaps the only thing I would say is that the fare box recovery calculation for Capital Connection is complicated because of that fixed sum contribution that two regional councils make. However, their fares are higher than the fares for Tahuya. And the independent review that we did following the 2-year review that we did in 2024 did look at what would be what it would look like for Tahuya to have a fare that was at $30 or over $30, and that's what they're charging for a similar length trip down south. So that's the difference. We're currently at $24 for a single on our B card. They're at 35. So that's what's in front of us. We said in the independent review as it came through the committees in 2024 that there was clearly an opportunity to separate the fare structures for bus and rail and accelerate rail. So direction today would be really helpful.
Can I just comment on that? If my memory serves me correctly, the subsidy being paid by Greater Wellington was $250,000, with a sum lesser than $100,000 being paid by Horizon. So say $350,000. I'd be more than happy to move that Hamilton City Council subsidises Tahuya fares by $350,000. I think that's more than fair. So there's your starting point, Phil. Thank you.
You mean the ratepayers of Hamilton City or Hamilton City Council?
Yes, the Hamilton City ratepayers subsidise it by $350,000, and I'll go to Auckland and see if I can get a matching $100,000 from them if you want me to. That's where it should be starting from, not where we are at the moment, which is 2.3 million or whatever.
Well, that's a totally different funding system from the one that the agency has just approved.
Ben.
Just picking up on that point in terms of the funding, from what I can get from Janine, she said earlier, NZTA has approved a 60% and that the fare structure was part of that discussion, and that there isn't an opportunity to increase the fares between this year and June 2027. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I don't think that's what I said. So the NZTA subsidy is always off net cost anyway. So cost less fare recoveries, and then we get the portion there. What I was referencing was, I think, through the last annual plan, based on direction from NZTA around fare box recovery targets, we had included, and it's set out in this report in terms of where we're at, what the increases over the 3-year period would be in annual fares and fares paid per annum. And then there's an update on where we're at. So they're two separate matters. But I think NZTA had approved the approach that council had put to them in terms of increasing fare box recovery, but not to the extent or as quickly as they had originally indicated. I think then now the conversation is, can we go separate out bus services and those fares from the Te Huia fares, particularly for this last period of the trial. And I think that probably needs some more work done on it, and could be one of those matters that we bring back to you before you actually finalise the annual plan.
Fine.
Thank you.
I'm happy with where the fares are at the moment because we've got a 1-year trial. What I'm more interested in is actually not proceeding with this Te Huia rolling stock case at all, because I noticed that this is from a detailed business case produced in March 2024, which was going to require 12 Te Huia carriages, and that the key assumption is the NZTA board will approve Te Huia to become a continuous program from 1st of July 2026. Well, clearly they haven't done that. So I would suggest this whole exercise could be delayed for a whole year. And given that, there are 3 options at the moment. One is to business as usual status quo, but still requires $50,000. Then it's the 550, then there's a 400,000. There's the 3 options that are provided. What about delaying it for a year and not spending anything? Why can't we have that as an option?
Yeah, through the chair, I will answer that question if I may. The reason that we are advising that this business case work is undertaken now is because there are opportunities to ensure that we get future rolling stock investment into various processes that are ongoing over the next 12 months. So back at our workshop in December, we talked about the potential for procurement of Te Huia rolling stock to become part of the current Greater Wellington contracts as a means of avoiding what would otherwise be significant procurement process costs associated with that. So if we were to go down that route and discuss a deal with the supplier of the Greater Wellington rolling stock, we would need to undertake the business case work as soon as possible, and certainly in the next financial year. Otherwise, that opportunity will effectively be lost. We would need then to undertake our own procurement process, which would cost considerably more than using the Greater Wellington process. So that's one reason why we've said we would advise doing this work now. Also, we have the next regional land transport plan and indeed national land transport programme. So if we do need to get any investment for Te Huia into those documents, once again, we would need to do that business case work in the next financial year. And also we have maybe the opportunity to submit a Crown budget bid at the end of this financial year. We did have the potential to submit one at the end of last year, but because we didn't have a business case, we weren't asked to move forward with that particular proposal. So the advice is that we do this work because then we are prepared for any eventuality. Delaying it a year would mean all of those factors would effectively be in past history and wouldn't be able to take advantage of them. So that's really why we're suggesting we invest a relatively modest amount of money in business case terms to get things moving on the rolling stock. The reality is also that we're not guaranteed that NZTA as a regulator will grant a desired 10-year extension to the current rolling stock. It could be less. NZTA could also potentially want us to show some commitment to investing in new rolling stock as part of that safety case variation. That's a possibility. So again, what we're trying to do is de-risk everything by getting the rolling stock business case work done as soon as possible.
I just want to say, I fundamentally disagree with this approach. What you're suggesting here is that we must go ahead and do this business case to get into the Wellington rolling stock bid. But then it's also noted that a 10% deposit will be required to be made between July 26 and 2027 for the money. So you're actually starting the process, and then we have to pay 10% towards the 130 million business case. So I'm just not certain why when we don't have a surety that NZTA is going to even approve the trial function moving forward, we are racing ahead with this program. And even then, when you even look at the status quo for $50,000, the disadvantage is it's not liable to enable a credible document. If we go to the 550,000 document, disadvantage not likely to enable a credible document. So regardless how much you spend, you're not getting a credible document out of your, it's on page 258, preferred option disadvantages. So we're not getting any further, and I don't see the urgency to rush forward to get on the bottom of Wellington's trains when we have to pay a 10% deposit when we don't even know this train is going to continue.
Yeah.
So I respond to that directly, but the risk that we have been sharing with you since the train started its trial is that the rolling stock we have has a finite date. And up until the conclusion of the current safety case extension process, we don't know what that date will be. But there is a point where we will not be able to utilise this rolling stock into Auckland or for use in the Waikato region. So what we've been talking to you about since the commencement of the trial, and we had a long conversation about it during the development of the 2024 long-term plan, was this risk needs to be understood, and our proposal is a way of mitigating that risk.
Just saying, on that, you've got here, without a commitment to purchase rolling stock, running rights may not be extended for the desired 10 years. Right. But it may not be determined. So we're being asked to run ahead, do a program, spend $550,000, which is 0.5% of rates increase, just to go ahead for something that may not happen. And it doesn't need to happen urgently. There's a 10-year window. So I just don't.
I think you made your point, Ben, because there's some others that want to talk to, but potentially in the same vein. So, Noel.
Yeah, all of what he said, plus two issues. One that I want to come back to, Chris talked about the trial versus reality. For me, the subsidies are masking the trial, but they were necessary to get the trial up and running. Unless we move to a real life scenario, we won't know whether we have the patronage and the likes. And if we then move from trial to reality and we increase fees to get the recovery, etc., and patronage goes down, then, you know, this is the whole lot of the unknown that Ben has alluded to, so I won't repeat. So how can we, so I'll carry on. The business case, again, all of what he said. So what I'm struggling with, and I understand where the staff are coming from, but the reality is asking us to do something that there's no guarantee. So we're saying to the ratepayer, we're going to spend in excess of $500,000 on a document that may not be sufficient according to the staff's own words. Then that's not prudent as a councillor to ratify. So, excuse me, we need to get our ducks in a row. And this sequencing is completely out of kilter. And I cannot support a business case for something that may not happen. And so we really need to be asking NZTA to even come further and say, let's get real. At the end of this, is there any support to go forward or not? And if not, well, let's not fool the public anymore. So we need some serious decisions from people that we can't control unless we know.
Thank you. Same points. Chris Hughes.
Yeah, look,
Can I get Chris a mic? Sorry if we've got a number of them on down there. Yeah, thank you.
We're talking about 550K, which we're going to be paying half of, and yet we're happy to spend $2.3 million of ratepayers' money subsidising a system which may be closed down in 12 months. Doesn't make sense. Get your commercial brains out, please. Like,
So,
it's just
yep.
nonsense.
So same point. Can I just clarify, the 550, are we paying half of, so has NZTA come to the party? Okay, yep, thank you. Gary Roma.
Just a question, because on rolling stock, I thought the option around the Wellington option of what 90% NZTA funded is gone. So we won't be able to hook onto that option from a capex point of view.
That's what the chair of the Greater Wellington Regional Council said to you when he presented to the committee, yes.
If I just can make a comment on that. And so we would, if you're keen for this to proceed, we would probably try and advocate very strongly to central government that we should be able to get the same level of subsidy that others have got interregional travel. And so that's probably the current position, but we'd be advocating differently. And we know the Minister of Rail, for example, is quite keen service.
Agreed. So part of that discussion, which links into what some of the other people are discussing here, is when you listen to the Minister's comments around that, Fairbox recovery is a lot higher, around 85%. So the contribution is greater around the whole operation. So he's not just looking at one aspect of it. So I think we've got to be very careful when we start thinking about whether we want to get a greater subsidy on capital expenditure to what we do around running costs, so around the OPEX and get that balance right. So the points that I think Noel and Chris are making are actually critical to that argument for yourself, Chris McCluck.
Keith online.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Ben and Noel have basically covered off my points, but in terms of Phil, you're right to weight up the risk factors, but some of us have been involved in bringing stuff in from overseas and getting bill slots know that tomorrow's another day and you shouldn't be shanghaied into making a decision which is not prudent, and I don't think this is prudent at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Maguire and then Tipper online.
The current intercity bus rates between Auckland and Hamilton, or Hamilton to Auckland, $27 to $55. Question is that a subsidised service? And if they can do that in buses that can service the towns all the way down and have a lot more flexibility, and the cost, even if we were to buy buses of the same standard of coach buses, compared with the hundreds of millions of dollars in train that doesn't service a lot of the area. But the question was, is that subsidised?
No.
And that's the point.
Tipper online.
Kia ora, probably just a couple of alternate views might have been reflect the length of time I've sat at this table. So they had a very long-ranging debate before I even came to council about whether trains or not. And NZTA put the first proposal up to us that I remember looking at to partner with them. So I think, like everything else, gentlemen, this is the national directive. Until they move away from funding trains, we'll be required to trial them. Again, it's going to be funded nationally. We should give them the same thing back. Fund it nationally, decide about it regionally, and we'll advise you. But it's one of those unfunded mandates they could take back, quite frankly. We don't want to do it. And if you read the case for the Golden Triangle, it's that we have these transport connections to move people around, not just goods. So again, it's strategic. It's a long game. It's a long play. We're planting trees that none of us will be under. And I'm really hoping for the region that I want to live in, that we're more far-sighted than this. Kia ora.
Thank you for those comments. Jen?
Yeah, no, this is really NZTA's project, more so looking at the funding aspect, more so than ours. And when I look at our local MPs being very positive about this project going forward, quite excitedly posting on social media, yay, it's been extended even before today's decision. So if it hadn't gone through, he might have had to take those comments back. But, you know, we had a lot of people around this table vote yes to a 1-year extension. Now, you don't do that if you don't believe in what comes afterwards, really. Like, otherwise, you're just throwing away $3 million or something. So, well done to those who have, you know, made up their mind whether they like want rail or not want rail, asked for division accordingly. But my point is that if you there is a report that James has written, and it finishes on the overall conclusion of this review and evaluation is that Te Hui has performed sufficiently well to be funded as a permanent service. There's a whole lot of scaremongering that it might not continue, but when you've got a report like that and you're giving it an extension for a year, the likelihood is that unless somebody messes something up royally, the next review is going to say pretty much the same thing. And we've got quite a good consensus around this table, I think, on lifting the fare box recovery a bit as well. So on that vein, the question is just when do you do the business case to turn this project into more than it currently is? Because you're not going to keep it at what it currently is. It doesn't work currently the way it is to everyone's satisfaction. So you can spend $550 now, or you can do it next year. It's all a lot of discussion, but we've been told very clearly that the cost will be higher the longer we delay. So I'm really curious to ask a question of, do we have any indication of how much more it is to buy more rolling stock in the future outside of the lower North Island contract support? Is that millions? Is it 10%? Is it? Do
So-
people know this?
So through the
Is it-
chair, that is one of the key questions that a business case would need to establish. So essentially, we would need to look at the offer that could eventuate if we proceeded with the lower North Island rolling stock supplier versus alternative suppliers, because there are other suppliers out there who may be able to do things cheaper. So a business case will look at both options essentially and try to come to a considered view about what the best option might be. And that also includes as well how rolling stock options might be funded and financed. We've discussed before about
Including who might own them?
again, who might own them. That's
Wonderful.
right. All of these matters, only a business case can come to sensible evidence-based conclusions about what the best approach would be. You know, that's why we're advising to do this work, so we can have that much more informed discussion about what ultimately both ourselves and NZTA and the Crown would be willing to invest in a future service. And at the moment, we don't know the answer. That's the
Perfect.
whole point of the business case.
Thank you, that helps. I would be really keen to explore, kind of like Ben does often, the detail of the 550, but at the same time, you've recommended that amount because you think that's what's required. I'm happy to go into it. It's just that I feel like we're just kicking it down the road with a whole lot of unknowns, and we're going to be sitting there with a train that's more than likely going to be permanent, and then we have no way of improving it, and we have more expensive ways of improving it. So I'm supportive of making a business case. The level of funding that you get to do that, I'm happy to discuss, but you can't just kick it down the road entirely. That's my point.
Liz,
I have sympathy both sides right now. It's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it? But look, first of all, Janine, I'm really keen to take you up on your offer to come back to us on that fare box recovery. I think, Chris, you know, you want to be more aspirational, don't you, in fare box recovery? So I'm going to use that word aspirational because I think that might lead us down a path that perhaps just closes that gap on where, you know, some of us have positioned ourselves. So if we can come back on that, I think that would be helpful, please. The team, sorry. The rolling stock. There's a couple of voices in Tipper. Your voice was, you know, well thought through. The voice that's missing, there's two voices that are missing here. Central government, I haven't heard a strong voice come from them in regards to rolling stock and that we should be pursuing it, because their voices, they've just been silent as far as I can see. I want to hear their voice. I need to understand what their position is, because if we're just kicking the can down the road for just a year, and their position is that they want us to do that. Well, let's hear it now, because that might change our position if they're intending to fund it. So if that's the plan, and our new, mayors are going to be sitting around this table at some point, what's their position? Where do they see the rolling stock as well? I kind of want to understand. And we have a regional transport committee meeting in the next 10 days. So I think their voice is missing in this space as well. If they're going to be sitting in these seats, and so we need to know what they're likely or what they're thinking. And I think that's kind of missing at the moment. So I'm not really, I just don't feel I have enough information to make a decision on the rolling stock right now, because I need to know what that thinking is.
Thanks, Liz. Angela.
Yeah, thank you. James, just a question on the timing of the procurement. So can you just talk us through, once you pay the deposit, you order the trains, how long does it take for them to arrive?
So through the chair, the general rule of thumb is that once you have placed an order, you are looking at 5 years to have the trains delivered and in operational service. And that is an average, and because an order for Tahui is likely to be relatively small compared to many others in the global rolling stock market, there is a risk. Could be longer than that. But again, until we actually go out and engage with some rolling stock suppliers who can give us a view about what they can accommodate within their production schedules, we don't really know. So again, a key question for the business case to establish is whether that 5 years is actually accurate, or whether it's more or possibly even less.
Okay, and just to follow on from that, and listening to people's views around the table as well, yeah, just to pick up on Liz's points, it is election year. Political parties will be coming out with their manifestos and election promises. So yeah, I'll be watching with interest to see who picks up on what in that. But just with us asking for the extension and it being granted in order to have that real robust decision making through the LTP, through the RLTP. To me, it does make sense to do this business case now. It gives us all of the information to go out to the public with next year. All things Tahui, if it continues at 51%, then we have that rolling stock conversation at the same time. We've got the information, we know what the costs are, and everyone can make an informed decision. As to the fears, yep, looking forward to that information coming back as well. But yeah, I'd be of the view to get the evidence, get the information, so we can make an informed decision through the long-term plan. Thanks.
So I've got Gary Maguire and I've got Chris Hughes. I do want to move this on. We have pretty much heard from everybody around the table, so I'll go to those questions and then we'll move it on. So Gary.
Is it feasible to give us a cost, an estimate within, say, 1 month of a comparison between buses and Tahui, coach buses?
No, Gary, this is about rolling stock. This is where we're working. We've got a trial going ahead with the Tahui,
yeah,
and that's that sort of thing. We're not. You're going back work that's been done previously. So this is not relative to this.
Can we be
due
respect?
respect? That's something you need to take up with the Transport Committee.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it is something different. It's been pointed out to me that Beckers have actually done a report on this already, and that report I think should be circulated to councillors so they can brief themselves on it.
So just for clarity around the table, so on rolling stock replacement.
Yes.
For the Tahui.
And all the
yep.
pluses and minuses, all the problems that are associated with it, which are not insignificant. So I'm suggesting that all needs to be read by councillors before we have any further discussions, because that should be incorporated in that report if we're going to go ahead with it.
So Phil, around.
It's not a report I'm aware of. Is it for Waikato or?
Get a copy of it for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I must admit, from my personal approach to, I'm along the same lines as Ben is. I think we're going at this too early. So, because I believe a big part of a business case is the fact that how the trial ends up and will it be supported further down the track. So just that's my 2 cents worth at this stage. So I don't think we're far enough on a one way or the other. And this is something that's going to come back to us, Janine. But I am aspirational in fair recovery.
Yep. So this would be another point that we would come back to council around that May, June period so we'll leave it in at the moment. But I think the team have obviously heard the conversation. We can bring that back for a final decision. So I think around the table, we've heard that potentially there's a Becker report. Potentially there are voices that if we have some indication from NZTA, from mayors and ministers, potentially if staff are able to gather any of that sort of information, it will help us make a bit better informed comment around this and whether this business case goes through in the annual plan or not.
Okay, so we'll just continue through the rest of our slides on that basis. So as I mentioned first thing this morning, there was a bid for funding for new services in the 2024 long-term plan that was not approved by government, and as a result, for each of the years of the annual plans, we go through a process of reducing the dollars out of the program that were identified for that work at that time. So, Dave, if you flick to the next slide, please. So the results of that are summarised here, and they are noted against the national indexation numbers that we've talked about already today, to give you the net changes and the agency funding perspective changes as well. So happy to pause for any questions on that.
Jen?
Just a quick one. It was in the paper around the Metro Spatial Plan work being delayed. Could you just explain that? Seems to be a recurring theme.
So the funding that you approved for the Metro Spatial Plan was underspent last financial year because the NZTA required the Transport Working Group of Futureproof to focus its time on the investment case for Hamilton Southern Links. As a result, the programme of work that was identified was deferred, and you approved some carryover funding to allow that work to step up this year. Really, we're now back into the remainder of that 3-year cycle of work. I don't believe there's any ongoing delays. I think we'll get to the end of the 3 years with the package of work that was identified delivered, and that will help feed into the integrated infrastructure and services conversation across particularly Hamilton and the regional council, but other future-proof partners into their LTP cycle. So then carrying on, the slide here describes a little bit of the story with the branding work that we've been doing and what we are looking to achieve in this financial year versus next financial year. Happy to take any questions on that.
I think we've had that discussion. Thanks, Phil.
Yep. And then if we go forward a couple of slides, Dave, you've then got our overall proposed programme budgets for next year. Happy to take any questions on that.
And just noting that these figures are all before the 60
decision. Yeah. No, I think that's it on regional transport connections. Thank you very much, team.
Thank you.
They all took a breath. Next up, customer, community and services.
So I'll lead this conversation off, although this group of activity does cover off governance, iwi Māori partnerships as well. But Dave, just want to flick into the next slide. So probably the predominant drivers in this area are actually in relation to things such as our triennial elections as well as the preparation of our next LTP. These are costs that come in 3 yearly lumpy cycles, and we spread those evenly across a triennium through the use of reserves. So we have additional money put in. So in terms of training elections, obviously that cost has been incurred in the current financial year. So we see a decrease in expenditure in that activity for 26-27. Whereas with the long-term plan, we're starting to lean into that starting this year and definitely next financial year. So we've got additional direct costs in that area around things like audit fees, bringing in some temporary resources in terms of project management and the like. Little footnote there that this is on a consistent footing in terms of previous LTP processes that we've been required to undertake. If there is any change in light of the local government reform around relief or what's required through the LTP development process, then that might have some positive impact in terms of that budget requirement, but we have nothing to base that on at this point in time. So we're continuing as we normally would. And then in terms of the change this financial year, it's really around that inflationary provision over our audit fees.
Ben.
Yes, this is item number 94, and planning and reporting. It's gone from 1.24 million to 2.2 million, but there's no real explanation of why there's an extra $1 million apart from possibly the additional costs of 256 for the long-term plan. Can you explain what the remainder is?
So that will be an allocation of staff time. So in terms of doing an LTP requires more staff effort. So the only change in direct costs is as is indicated up here. But we do see more time needing to be directed from a corporate planning team perspective, from a financial planning and reporting team perspective into our statutory planning requirements in an LTP than we do in an annual plan year.
So is that additional staff or contractors?
No, it's just an allocation of where people spend their time.
So will that mean there's a $1 million reduction somewhere else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Janine, just like to refer you back to page 55 of our finance and performance agenda we discussed last week, and you gave us budget FTEs there. I'd like to know how that fits into this chart, if you like. Just better visibility, because we're supposed to be examining these things in the performance committee, and I can't relate the two. I need to be able to connect the two, please.
Yes, that's right. So through the chair, just to clarify, in terms of at the Finance and Performance Committee meeting last week, I provided a deep dive into my directorate's expenditure. So that was viewed through, I guess, an organisational structure perspective as opposed to an external reporting focus. So the two don't marry nicely. They're not directly aligned because that some of that effort. So I think there's a separation within that report, in terms of the corporate support functions and then the actual program of work that the directorate delivers. So that program of work and the staff time and effort cost is shown within that report.
Thank you. So I'd like to talk about this offline, but just for everybody else. For me, if these are going to be useful for us, then they need to be tied back to a point of reference in our annual plan, so that we know this is what's happening and there's where the dollars are going. Make sense or not?
Yes, it does, and I've probably tried to do that with separating out the pure overhead and then the activities that are undertaken in terms of the program of work. I haven't given you the activity name that they contribute into. But
So
we can
that's the
match
missing,
that. Yep.
and tying into the dollars. So, okay, thank you.
I come to Tipper. Did you have a question?
Yes, just a brief one, Janine, in terms of the BAU services that this group represents, and then moving the new dial, which is transition to whatever that is. Do you think we've set aside enough in the in income for any work in that space? Because it will cost us, otherwise everyone's doing a job and a half, and how we're accounting for the transition work that needs to occur too. Thank you.
So through the chair, can I just clarify the transition work? Are you thinking from an organisation perspective or work that's coming at us from reform?
You're on mute, Tipper. You're muted.
We're going from reform into transition. I'm just making sure we're providing enough resources for that to occur.
Yes, so through the chair, we don't have anything explicitly provided for within the annual plan around that reform transition program at all. That's one of the key assumptions that I think councillors need to be clear on. We have talked about it in terms of that 250 from the prior year surplus, but specifically around a CCO establishment conversation. Aside from that, we have no provision within the budget to respond to that.
I think because we know it's coming down the track, it might be an action to the CA. I'll take your guidance on it, but that we keep that in front of us, because I'd hate for it to be a cost that we pretended we didn't know about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just,
yes.
There has, Tipper, just in response to that, I think you might be or may not have been at the Finance Committee meeting, but there is a projected surplus for this year, and mentally that's been put aside at this stage anyway to fund whatever may come out of the reorganisation costs.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Just noting that we also have within the agenda a deficit around our Civil Defence Emergency Management Group, which may be another demand on that prior year surplus. I think in terms of the second quarter forecast, we were at a $650,000 surplus. There's a sort of $450,000 challenge with Civil Defence Emergency Management Group that we're seeking some direction from Council on as part of this conversation as well.
Yep, thanks, Janine. Ben?
With no funds allocated, I just wonder if Chief Executive or you, I think that mayors of CTPs would make an easier ride for you in terms of implementation.
Right, moving on.
Yes, moving on. So I think that is all in terms of this group of activities, and that's just that outcome statement. So, Greg. So this is page 227 of the agenda.
Hello, councillors. So this activity covers both the work that we do in the resilience space, so working with our communities to provide information and also work with them in the adaptation projects, as well as our WRC emergency response, the work that we undertake. So building on the workshop that we had last week, it involves our flood management coordination, our marine oil spill response, general emergency response support to the organisation, and supporting CDM where we can. And there's been some very active examples of that over the last few weeks with this particular activity, working to deploy staff into both the group and local EOCs. As you can see there, there's no adjustments to the LTP budget has been requested. So I will leave it there, but happy to take questions. Thank you.
Jen?
Yeah, main question was I found somewhere in here about the review of the funding model for flood protection, it said something about timing having shifted by 12 months, and that was rather significant. No, it's not right here on the slide.
No, and so through the chair, that's not within this group of activities. It's around
Okay.
flood protection.
Come back to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or I can respond to it
Yep.
now, and then we don't need to come back to it. We have so the program was on track for the reporting of some principles back to council. Hoping to be able to workshop those April, May this year. We've got a CE KPI to land that by the 30th of June. I think there was some reporting on progress with that yesterday through CERC, which says there is some risk to that June date in light of staff being diverted into flood response activities. So some of the flood modelling work that we're needing to be completed to inform that review. But it's progressing. We're just monitoring the timeframes for it.
My understanding was we were going to have the long-term plan conversation be what the new funding model will be. Is that now no longer the case?
So through the chair, it's never been. So we've always acknowledged what we wanted to get into the LTP was the first conversation around the principles and communication of that, thinking that we would need potentially an amendment to the LTP around the actual implementation of a new funding arrangement. So we won't have that. We won't have that within the next 6 months, but it will be some clear communication with our ratepayers on what the principles for a change in funding would be.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Janine. Ben, you're on regional hazards and emergency
Yes,
response.
I am. So in item 94C, the annual plan was 866,000 for emergency response and has gone to 1.4 million, an extra $800,000.
Allocation of staff time, I think, is noted in the report.
Yeah, I would have to get an answer for you there,
Well,
councillor.
because at the same
because
time-
there are no adjustments to the budget that have been sought. It may well be, I mean, our staff numbers have remained consistent, so it will probably be a adjustment to allocation of time across the business.
Well, no, just checking on that, perhaps you need to look at that again. So it's gone from 866,000 to 1.4 million, but at the same time, the staffing numbers have gone from 20 down to 14. So the staff numbers have gone down by 6. Is it regional use?
I don't know where he's doing that.
Rick?
FTE maybe.
That's page.
District staff.
No, that's civil defence.
Just we can clarify that later.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if what it is there's a number of staff who sit in that team, but the amount of staff across the organisation who have time allocated into that space, it's increased.
That could be it, yes.
And also I note that when we come to Waikato Civil Defence, they've dropped by $800,000 in expenditure. So obviously money's been switching around.
No,
No?
they are two separate activities, quite separate and distinct. So the report notes that it's the increase in total expenditure is reallocation of staff time within the Integrated Catchment Management Directorate. So it's not an overall increase in expenditure for the organisation, it's just where that's sitting.
Location, yep. Oh, Chris.
Yeah, can I just ask, who's got overall fiscal responsibility for the organisation? Regional.
So the regional hazards is
So
WRC.
is regional council responsible for monitoring this and managing it, or somebody else?
So we are for this. This is our work. And then the next activity that we go into is the Civil Defence Emergency Management Group, which is arm's length from us.
So this is Greg's.
Yep.
Correct.
Responsibility. Okay, thank you.
Did you have another question, Ben?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, we'll move into the next one, which is the civil defence, as mentioned.
Greg won't go too far away because he'll be back next.
I'll stay.
questions. I think Jenny has kind of mapped this out. So we have a situation where there's been a change over the last couple of years where we've moved from this council having service level agreements with territorial authorities, which involved a number of roles being employed by this council, to those roles going back to their home council. And that, in a nutshell, has been the predominant reason why the group ends up in this position where there looks to be a deficit. So, as you'll have seen in the report, there's a couple of options about how to move forward, and the option that is, I suppose, the option that if you were going to ask me my recommendation, it would be the first option, which would be to utilise the surplus to clear that reserve. It's the same, effectively, it's the same ratepayers because it goes out to the same people. And so it means that you don't have to go out and rate those people for that 448,000 if we have $448,000 of their money that we can use to clear that reserve. So that would be my recommendation. We had this is a matter that will eventually go before the joint committee, but we had a meeting of what's called the coordinated executive group. There's a subgroup of that called the managing executive group, which is too many acronyms, and certainly that was the preference of that group in terms of its recommendation through to joint committee.
Chris?
I'm just interested in how this deficit arose. If you take the salary decrease out, it should have been a gain for us. The people have still been employed, so we're not paying them. And suddenly we end up with a deficit. So did we plan to have this deficit? Or?
Unfortunately, Chris, I wasn't the director at the time, so the detail, I wasn't involved with the detail, but at the higher level, the revenue that was coming from the territorial authorities was 940. So that revenue disappeared, but the salary costs was only 448. And so there's a difference between the salary costs gone down and the revenue that's gone down. There's a few other factors in play, but fundamentally that's the reason for that difference.
Must be missing something. Doesn't make sense to me.
So labour costs are more than just salary.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so a portion of this, a reasonable portion of these difference in costs are the burden costs that would have been spread around all parts of this organisation, including CDEM, which reflects where people are in terms of their overhead burden, their IT burden, all those sorts of things. Sorry? Yeah, I'm sorry, Robbie, that's a detail. I just don't know that fine detail. But the loss of revenue means that some of that burden cost that would have been picked up over by civil defence is a burden cost which will be within this organisation, of which civil defence is part. But remember, it's separately funded through its own targeted rate.
So what you're telling me is that somebody's dropped the ball on this. They haven't been doing their work.
I think it would be fair to say that there's been some learnings with how that process
I don't care how you
fell
pick it
out.
up.
Yeah.
That's what's happened. Somebody's dropped the ball. We were asking our ratepayers to pick it up.
I don't think that's the case because the collective ratepayers would have been paying for this. It's just where it's coming from. It's no additional, if that makes sense. It's like the rate was coming through the SLAs, which is still from the same group of ratepayers. It's just
somebody's
different.
Obviously not foreseeing what was going to happen, and they haven't rated accordingly. That's what this is telling me, if I'm understanding it correctly. Anyway, look, it's history. It's happened. I'm just saying we must ensure that this is not allowed to happen again, because It's not a lot of money, but if it was a lot of money, then we'd all be very concerned about it. So
I hopefully can give you confidence, Chris, that I am now over this and it won't happen again.
thank you, Brent.
Oh,
Just on a similar vein, we've got the same issue arising or potentially developing in the ICM space where a number of drainage districts are looking to exit from council management to self-administered, which will take out the payment of those burden costs shifting to other districts, which has now accelerated conversation in the last few days with a number of drainage districts. So there will come a time when there's a tipping point where it's uneconomic for any drainage district to remain under the control of council. So this is something that I absolutely alert the organisation to going forward.
Chair of Finance.
I think you've had enough. You've had enough of me. But the point I just want to make as a general observation that this question of stranded costs is going to become a greater and greater issue for all councils and territorial authorities. And we, as a council, I'm sure our chief executive is very much aware of it. We just have to be very conscious of activities which are moving around and that will happen, and it's going to happen more and more, that we need to be in front of it rather than behind it. Otherwise, this is going to crop up every time you change the business model. So, sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's all right. Tolerance is one of my virtues. Right. There are the two options. Brent's indicated his preference. I'm just trying to gauge of councillors if there is a contravening view to that preference.
I have a question about, so the other one was increase the civil defence targeted rate slower over a number of years. I mean, what kind of increase talking about, and would that then be sustained into perpetuity or not?
So fundamentally, councillor, if we don't do what option one is, option two is that the civil defence part of our collective regional organisations has a negative reserve balance of some $450,000, and the joint committee would need to make decisions about what it wanted to do with that. And the joint committee, which cells are apart, determines that they wish to ask this council to rate an extra $450,000 to clear that reserve, then this council would need to then rate that extra $450,000 to clear the reserve. And then the commentary there about the timing is whether the joint committee decided it wanted to do that over 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, or 4 years. The option one here takes that issue away.
Admin away. If we have surplus.
Can I get clarity? Because I think you're crossing the option numbers over.
Yeah, back the front.
Sorry.
So there's option one and option.
Yeah. So you're suggesting option two, but comes out of the prior year surplus.
Correct. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just for that clarity. Yep. So I have Noel, and then Gary, and then Chris, and then that's.
This is exactly what I spoke about earlier about having something in the kitty. So absolutely support the utilisation of the reserve to settle this, because of the argument that we've all paid for it across, I think there's 400,000 ratepayers or thereabouts. It's about $1 a ratepayer. But it needs to be addressed in the long-term plan going forward. So would absolutely support that.
So noted. Thank you, Gary.
Seems to me that, okay, there's been a faux pas, but there's money there that can cover it correct in the simplest way and in line with what we've just gone through with Otrahonga and Coromandel recently. I think we need to front up and move on and expect more to come in the future.
Chris Hughes.
I'm against not rating separately for it. As far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't be having sludge funds, which use money at councillors' whim to move from one to the next.
Thank you.
If
Number
we're
two.
stuffed up, we rate for it. End of story. Money that we overtake from, we overrate ratepayers, goes back to. So there's absolute transparency. Yep.
So you're number one. Okay.
Yeah.
Robin.
Yeah, I'm actually for the just increasing the rate to it, tell you the truth. But Last year I'd have spent a couple of hours with Julian in Wellington, and like legislation wise, it sounded like we were going to have to do a lot more in this space. Are we not going to have to?
So
That's the bit so if that is that we are going to have to do more in this space, then you should be coming to us with a business case if this is where the government direction is, and the rate increase would be valid to do so. And that's the bit think we're missing out of all of this.
So if I can just answer that on behalf of the group controller. So Julian absolutely is intending to come to joint committee to talk about the things that you've just described, Robbie, as part of an LTP conversation as opposed to an annual planning conversation, because it's significant changes that come through annual plan, through LTP, not through annual plan. And so Julian is absolutely intending to talk to joint committee about all those things you've just described about the things that are coming, but as part of LTP.
Thank you, Ben.
I just want to clarify, we've just agreed to allocate the 2.5 million back to the rates. Where is this prior year surplus that this money is going to come out of?
So the 2.5 million was 23-24. You understand that?
Yep.
Okay, so.
But you
the
indicated
600,000
no prior year surplus, the 2.3 million.
So where this would be drawn from is the $650,000 operating surplus that we're currently reporting for this financial year. So
I haven't seen that anywhere in the documents.
well, it was for the forecast, which was reported to the Finance and Performance Committee meeting last week.
But not in this document.
No, there's been some.
So there's a figure in this document.
So it doesn't sit there, but that is seen to be an opportunity to square this away this financial year. So it is not a problem going into the 26-27 annual.
My view is it should come through an increase in the civil defence rates. Because CDM can come back to us at any time and request / demand we increase rates, and we're obliged to do so. So, yeah.
So through the chair, I guess we've recommended consideration through the surplus, consistent with other decisions that council's made in terms of if we have funds, we should return them, but also being very cognizant of council's appetite for increasing rates at this point in time. So we don't need to do that. We can resolve the issue this year without needing to increase rates to recover it. As is noted in the report, we have some precedent around this. We did clear some additional costs that were incurred by the group following COVID. It was about 380,000, I think. That again, we'd taken general operating surpluses from council and cleared that rather than seeing short-term increases in rates. So just tried to be consistent in terms of the way that we've approached it.
Jen, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a lot of sympathy for what Robbie was saying before, and I think that in the long term, the CDM rate is likely to have to rise for the changes that are coming in that space. But that to me sounds like an LTP discussion, and to have this sit in deficit for a whole year and then deal with it would just be a lot tidier to use the surplus. So if push comes to shove, I'm leaning towards using the surplus if we have any. Yes.
Oh,
Question is, if we were to increase the CDM rate, targeted rate, does that require consultation? It doesn't. And therefore, the other question is, essentially by returning, if we looked at returning it to the ratepayer and then increasing the rate, is it not one and the same? No, I'm just, sorry, I'm just trying to get a clearer understanding. We return the rate, the surplus back through a paying for the
Previous year.
Yeah, basically zeroing it out with the surplus. So is that not one and the same?
No. So if we were to use the operating surplus, we would clear that this year. So it's not actually an annual plan issue. I think if the rate was to increase, there probably needs to be a conversation with the group, and I think all of this is subject to a
So
conversation.
long-term plan for the rate increase, that's got to come through from business case. But right
Yeah.
now, we're talking about a 400,000 deficit.
Yep.
And we can cover that.
Yep.
And that effectively is giving it back to the ratepayers, because that is a across
Yep.
the board.
Because
surplus.
instead of having to
Thank you.
increase rates.
Increase it, but if you increase the rates, it doesn't require a special considered process.
So I'm just looking to help staff out and how they're going to bring this back to us, because I can't see that there is any different information that's going to come back to us. Potentially what that increase in rates might look at as a rate number. But apart from that, I can't see any difference in information that we don't already have in front of us. So I'd rather we get a decision on this now.
And the
one
increase
way
in
or the other.
rates would be $2 per property effectively. If we say 450,000, 220,000 properties. It's
Okay.
It's
So
of
there's
that,
your
it's of that
indication
order of magnitude.
of a value to increase the rate to cover this deficit. Or you can use the existing surplus to cover this deficit, and there is no rate impact.
That's right. And the surplus allows us to address it this financial year. So we have a clean slate moving forward.
Ben.
Oh, just clarifying, if, for example, we choose not to go ahead with the expensive version of the business case for rail, that leaves us 550,000 sitting in the budget as well. I mean, does the surplus increase?
So through the chair.
Guys, please listen.
So the conversation around the table was for further information to come back from staff on that business case before you set the budget. So at that point in time, we would be saying, is the $550,000 in and to be funded, or is it out? So we won't keep it in the budget if the work isn't to be done, if council don't agree to do the work. So we will drop the rates requirement. So there's no surplus.
But just to clarify what the chair just said, it's not 550 impact on the rate.
Correct.
Rate
It's
payer,
49% of that.
49%.
Yep.
So what is the cost of returning surplus as opposed to just paying the deficit? Is there any?
Yeah.
Returning the surplus. So,
It depends how we return it.
But yeah, so with the recommendation from staff to use the current year's surplus to repay, to cover it, it's journal entries in a financial system. So 2 minutes of work.
2 minutes? Yeah.
Clear it all out. Versus, well, it's no more. I mean, if you want to leave the deficit there and increase rates, that will come through the budget setting process. But that just has a longer tail onto it, depending on what period the repayment is done. So we need to manage that balance over however many years that looks like. So there's the strike of a pen in terms of an administrative matter, or a bit more management and oversight that's needed.
Chris Hughes.
As far as I'm concerned, we as responsible councillors should be going for absolute transparency. Taking things out of a pool over here and allocating them against a pool over there that they haven't been rated for is not good transparency. It's not the way we should be going out and putting information on the public. Unfortunately, we've got a few people around here that have never worked in the private sector. This would not happen. The level of governance that's required in the private sector operates at a much higher level, and a much higher level of transparency is expected of those sitting around these tables. So as far as I'm concerned, increase the rate so everybody can see what we're doing, and that money then gets paid across to the group that needs it. So that's where I sit.
Brent, let's just come to Brent to answer.
So if I can try to help a little bit with that, with the concern that you've got, Chris. Remember that a number of these costs that we're talking about are costs that this organisation, WRC, has sheeted through our allocation structure to the Civil Defence Group to fund. So they're not. So the costs that the totality of us have sheeted across into our civil defence part of the business. It's become complicated with the changing of, it used to be funded because we had a whole bunch of staff there that we had revenue that was coming in from the district councils. So it's not like civil defence has gone out and generated new costs. This is not new business that civil defence has done. Civil defence haven't increased their work program, they haven't increased their staffing numbers, they haven't increased their deliverables. So I just wanted to make clear that they haven't gone out and done a whole bunch of new things and then said, come to this region and created themselves a deficit to ask this council to fund.
I think the council's clear on that, Brent. I don't think that was
Can I
actually
respond to
issued.
that?
You may.
These costs have been incurred, correct me if I'm wrong, by a group of people who have been allocated to carry out Waikato Civil Defence emergency work. End of story. We haven't thrown a whole lot of other costs in there and dressed it up as civil defence emergency.
So yes, but it's how the overhead burden that comes with that is being funded. Yeah, and that overhead, a good portion of this was how the overhead burden was funded. It was funded through SLAs, through the revenue coming from district councils. That revenue has gone down, but those overheads have stayed the same.
Okay.
I want to move this on. I did think we would potentially get to a decision, but I'm starting to doubt this. So very quickly, if it hasn't already been discussed, Jen, then I've got Gary Raymer, then I've got Ben. Totally relative. There's two options in front of us.
Yeah.
Jen.
I just wanted to correct that it's quite clear in our papers that the surplus has come about primarily by investment performance, planned use of reserves and council policies, not over rating, because that keeps getting implied that we over collected. We did not.
Noted. There's a number of facts that, yeah, factors. Gary Raymer.
Just very quickly, if we don't use, as Chris Hughes says, our slush fund, our 650 surplus, what happens to that 650,000? Do we carry it over and we have a problem with the same with the 2.5 next year?
So through the chair, that is staff's current estimate of where they will land in terms of at an organisational level against the annual plan budget by 30th of June 2026. So that's taking into account a number of variables that operate within our budgets of overs and unders. We will continue to track that. We will look at it again in third quarter. But at the end of the day, if council decides not to apply that funding in here, then yes, it will sit as an unallocated surplus at the end of this year. That comes back onto this table for you to determine how that's utilised.
Thank you. We can leave that there. Ben, did you have a?
Just going to say we should go to a raise of hands.
Mr. Chair, can I just add one comment in terms of this is while the Civil Defence Emergency Management Group rate is noted as a targeted rate, it is applied across every ratepayer in the region. So it works like our UAGC, it's just got a special label on it. So by returning it through the way that staff have recommended, it is not advantaging or disadvantaging any part of the community.
Thank you. Robbie, did you have a final comment?
Just how long has this been visible that this 400 thing has been there? Has it been 6 months or has it been, when was this identified and not brought to us far earlier? That's the question. We got a committee member over there, but has it been related to the committee? We haven't heard about it till today, so I reckon that's a real issue. If you actually come to us before Christmas, if it was identified or whatever.
Let's find the answer.
So the Civil Defence Emergency Management Group had a reserve that went into the deficit at the end of last year to the tune of
about 160,000, I think, from memory.
Previous to that, its reserve was slightly in the positive. It had, and so this issue is, well, it would have come to the council as part of the financial reports that came through. There was a negative reserve at the end of last year, and then this has grown through the course of this year to the point that Janine has brought it to the very first finance committee.
The question
2 weeks
is, when
ago.
did the SLAs stop? When did the SLAs stop?
So the SLAs themselves ended different times, but around December last year, December 2024, I think the decisions were made for the SLAs to be ending at the end of last financial year. But of course, that all happened in the middle of the financial planning cycle.
Yeah, so since June.
Okay, I will go to a quick hands up straw poll type to see if we're as divided as I potentially believe we are. So those in support of using the prior or this current, I'll get my wording right, this current surplus as indicated to cover this hole, please raise your hands. Eight, nine. So we have 9 indicating support. And those that would rather see a rate increase.
Can I just ask, what will happen if we don't have a surplus as projected this year?
Not sure.
Well, I'm asking the question.
Not sure. Well, apparently there's 600,000 sitting in the bank now that potentially will pay off this 448,000.
So through the chair, we will be reassessing all of these positions at the end of this financial year once we actually understand what that operating position is. At the moment, from a forecast perspective, we would put in the repayment of it, but that's still subject to balancing the books at the end of the year.
Okay, so currently that still sits on the table in front of us. No, I'm going to keep going. It's only 10 to 4. Potentially we haven't got too many more decisions in front of us.
Still.
Robbie, I'm not interested now. Thanks. We've moved on. I'm not interested. Thank you. I'm not interested. Not interested. Next item. Thanks.
Right. So me again. Turning to our flood protection, land drainage, or flood protection and control works groups of activities. So this is the activity that looks after our infrastructure, so both flood protection, land drainage, and roof management. So what you'll see on page 229 of your electronic agenda is that there is some planned changes through the long-term plan, and that includes an adjustment to our agreement under Project Watershed with Hamilton City Council. So for those that aren't aware, we do contribute approximately 800,000 to Hamilton City Council every year to allow them to undertake roof management works within the city. That's through a memorandum of understanding with Project Watershed. So we collect the rate and pass it on to Hamilton City. And we also provide information and advice to make sure that program is successful. So there is a 50K increase built in through the long-term plan. In addition to that, you can see at the bottom of the page that there are some adjustments to the budget. A couple of things I'd highlight. As we've discussed previously, we have brought our environmental monitoring function in-house for Motukaraka and Lake Waikiri. And so that has showed some realised savings. And whilst we have had to budget for some additional labour, we've also reduced our contracted services budget by 280,000. So an overall benefit, and that particular program is underway and showing some really good outcomes and benefits from bringing that work in-house. So a really good outcome there. I would note that there's some additional costs for our structural audits. And so this is our annual program that we do to inspect our assets, to understand their condition and performance, and identify the work that's required through our capital program. All of those changes that are identified have been built in through either additional funding through Kanoa or through use of our reserves through our zones. There's a bit of an increase in power usage. I think we've already covered off that our flood protection activity is a significant user through our pump stations. Couple of things at the top of page 230. Note that the Coromandel reconsenting process is underway, although one amendment I would note is that that project has been placed on hold for 6 months. And that is because of the changes to the Resource Management Act and a need to understand what will be required going forward. So that project has been agreed to pause for 6 months so we can understand more before taking that forward. And the last one there is just noting that there is a Thames Valley planting project underway, and that is funded through Kānoa, and that we did talk about. That's through Tranche 1, and so that work is already underway this year and continuing into next year. I'll just note that this activity also has a substantial capital program, and that's contained, I don't have the page number, but later on in the document there's an outline of that capital infrastructure program for flood protection and control works. Focus of that is on the major projects that are funded through our Kānoa funding, both Tranche 1, which is underway, and Tranche 2, which we've already talked about today in terms of those funding deeds. We'll leave it there, Mr. Chairman, and happy to take any questions.
Happy to take any questions here, Ben.
2 questions. One, you've talked in here about the contracted services for Lower Waikato is delivered internally, so saving 197,000. Well, it's now costing 197,000.
Yeah.
The second sentence says additional contracted service expenditure is now included for 280,000, requiring confirmation of proposed resourcing for this work.
That should say not included. So we have reduced our contracted services budget.
Well, it says now included.
Yeah, so it should be
right. Okay.
Apologies for that error.
You didn't point that out when you should have possibly done it. And it was something Jen was on earlier, what you might want to pick up, Jen, was review of the funding for flood management and drainage services. So this is the timing of this, one of the business case updates. Jen, do you want to pick up on that? This is well, the timing for the delivery has been shifted out 12 months due to staffing availability. So you want to comment on that?
So through the chair, I responded to that earlier. That's an active program at the moment with some deliverables that we're hoping to get in front of council middle of this year, but there has been some timing pressure as a result of the recent flood responses. So, yeah, but that's work that's happening right now.
No other questions. We'll move on to the next.
Yeah, so
ICM, is it?
yeah, still with me. So this is the Integrated Catchment Management group of activities. So this covers our catchment management, biosecurity and biodiversity activities. So again, there are some adjustments to the budgets, but those adjustments are made within the relevant reserves, both in terms of zone reserves for the catchment program and the biosecurity reserve in terms of some program adjustments that are noted there. I won't dive into any further detail, but happy to take questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, Ben.
Just 2 things. Waikato River Authority co-funding not available. Does that mean there's no co-funding or just for specific projects?
It'll be for specific projects. So every year we have I guess a fluctuation in our revenue that comes in from different funders, including the WRA, and so we adjust our budgets each year to account for that change.
One. The other one was 170,000 for 3 years for the management of freshwater clams.
Yep.
That came through the annual plan. I just wanted to question, the 170,000 was originally for 133,000 was for contractor compliance. So I wanted to check. There was 12,000 for education, 2,000 project management, 20,000. Most of it was contractor compliance.
Yep.
Where are we at with that? And how much has been spent this year? And is there still a requirement for the next 2 years for that?
Yeah. So yeah, as you rightly pointed out, there's 2 different elements covered by this operational budget that's in place for 3 years. One is the development of training material and standard operating procedures for our teams to do what they need to do with regard to Capicula. That work is underway. There is an increase in the allocation for that particular work program. So there's a contract in place for 69K. The remainder of that budget is in place to, as you say, deal with the additional costs that we're seeing from our service providers. It spans across the organisation, so ICM, Maritime Services and Environmental Monitoring. So far to date, we've had an additional 59,000 has been claimed from that budget. So it is being well used at the moment, and I expect it will be continue to be used over the next over the period that this funding has been approved.
The original business case also had a contractor at 60,000 a year for 3 years. Has somebody been hired as a contractor to operate this program?
Yes, so we've engaged a contractor to undertake the development of our SOPs, development of our training, and then the delivery of our training as well. So yes, that's been completed.
So I'd be interested in an update on where we got from that, considering it floated through an annual plan process and we haven't seen an update since. But if
Yep. So through you, Mr. Chair, can I suggest that we provide an update to the Integrated Catchment Management Committee on this particular matter?
fine.
Help that. There's been any other questions on integrated catchment management? No, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Oh, thanks, Dave. Big picture items there you'll see is the ongoing delay with the Irish Next Gen program. And so whilst it talks about an increase of spend next year, that's a delay of spend that was supposed to have happened last year because of the delay in that project. But of course, as you're all aware, this is really about the timing of drawing down on the loan. And so fundamentally, because we have drawn down a lot less on the loan by now than we had anticipated, there's actually a bit of a savings in terms of we're not paying back loans yet. That's just the timing of spending. You'll see that we are now fully immersed in the transfer of the Port of Taharoa and charging fees off to Taharoa, and for the EPC, it'll probably be in the May EPC where we'll give you a good update about how that is all progressing. I think I've mentioned before additional funding that's come in from partner funders, both in relation to the education programs and the Kura-Waiti program and the waste program, which is all reflected then in increased expenditure. We've already talked about the primary industry, which is on the next page there, Dave, those reductions. And we've already talked about the new revenue as we will start to transition across to user charges for as the new legislation comes into force. So you'll see over time more revenue coming from direct charging for permitted activity monitoring. On the next page there, this is a conversation that we've had a number of times. I had the workshop last year and the council asked that we come forward with a proposal around how could we strategically get ahead of the risk around derelict vessels. You'll have seen in the strategic proposal that teams identified that there's probably about $500,000 worth of vessels out there that would need removal over time. And this proposal is about starting to get into that work to reduce that risk to council. And so you would have seen that proposal is in next year, $90,000. Every vessel, obviously, that we remove from the water, which is at risk, saves us potentially, you'd have seen in the news some of those ones in Auckland, where one vessel can cost more than $100,000 to remove some of those big old ferrocement vessels. So that's rather than a nut plan. The next slide is about farm plans, but we had that conversation earlier. Thank you.
Ben.
Yeah, three things. Primary industry engagement community education has gone from 5.4 million to 5.9 million. So perhaps you can explain what's in that.
I can explain that, and I'll do that really quickly.
And also the additional partner funding of 130,000 is expected. So where's that coming from?
So because of the way that the financial system is structured around goers, the the IRIS work needs to be shown somewhere. And I gifted my manager who oversees the education, but our education business, to be the project owner of the IRIS project. And so the IRIS project reports through his budgets. And so when you see community education of 5.4 million, just note that 3.8 million or so of that is actually the IRIS project. And so that growth that you see is around IRIS, where we've had growth and spend in community education solely. That's in the Enviro School space, where it's being funded by the territorial authorities, and in the Kura Waiti space, which is funded by the $500,000 that over the next 3 years that we've got from the Waikato River Authority. So in the education space, increase in spend is from increased revenue from third parties.
Okay, fine. Marine services, when it comes to staffing, there were no staff in 25, 26, and there's now 13 staff, 26, 27. Just wanted to know what happened there.
So that's a consequence of a little realignment that I've just done. So maritime used to be a subset of regional compliance, reporting through to Patrick Lynch. With the growth of our responsibilities in the maritime space, and in particular taking on responsibilities for Takaroa, the role of the regional harbour master is somewhat more significant. And so now that reports directly to me. And so you'll see that stuff reported separately because it's been separated out from regional compliance. So that's why you'll see it's gone from 0 to 13.
That's fine. I just wanted to ask you about delivery vessels. Are we on to that?
Part and parcel, I think we talked to the business case now. Happy to do that, yeah.
So I note here that you've removed 14 high-risk vessels, identified 32 more. The current contracted services budget is 180,000.
Yeah, so the current contract services budget is around delivering our business as usual, all of our aids to navigation, of which we have 1,000 odd, and all the work that we do with our contractors managing that. That's an existing budget which delivers business as usual.
Yep.
So this is about additional work to where we are identifying vessels which are about to fail, and it is far better to remove them before they fail and collapse, before they become a navigation hazard, which then becomes our responsibility to remove. The 90,000 is about starting to eat away at the $500,000 worth of at-risk business that we see over the coming years.
I understand
to reduce those risks.
But the question is, if you go to page 265, business as usual, which is adopt a purely reactive approach, only remove vessels that are sunk or otherwise, the estimated cost is $300,000. And the do different is $90,000. So
one's proactive and one's reactive.
Yeah.
The reactive is going to cost $300,000, and then you're estimating.
It's a risk conversation, Ben. So because you don't know, if 3 of them go down and the 3 big ones, it's 300 grand in a year. I'm not saying to you that the $90,000 is going to take away the risk. We're just going to try to remove the biggest risks as we can. If we don't do anything about these risks, what will happen is what has happened in the past, which is something bad happens and we
No, I
come to
understand.
council.
I'm not questioning that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that in terms of your numbers, on page 266, you're costing $60,000 a year, comes to 300,000, or 90,000, which actually comes to 450,000. But it's not clear that you're currently expecting to spend 300,000 out of $180,000 budget, and now you're wanting to go to 450,000 over the time frame.
So the business case outlines it's directly the $90,000 is for work with derelict vessels. And it's proactive work. I think this is a really important piece of work because not only it's a major environmental risk that we're facing, and it's a biosecurity risk not only from pest organisms that attach to hulls of derelict vessels, et cetera, et cetera. So I think to me that is fairly clear.
It's simply the figures seem to be 300,000 there and 90,000 there. That's
Yeah, I think what you're referring to, Ben, and apologies if it hasn't been really clear, is the staff are making some assumptions. And so they're saying if this were to happen, it would cost $300,000, and that would be until we've got. And because sometimes we can remove a vessel for $10,000. Sometimes it's $90,000. You don't know. So I think in terms of the business case, what the staff were saying is reactively. This is the sort of thing that we might expect. We don't know, because if no vessels go down next year, there won't be $300,000 worth of costs. And so they're trying to provide a comparison point around the risks that come from being reactive versus trying to mitigate those risks by having a progressive response. Now, in the ideal world, there would be $500,000 made available and we would clear away all of that risk. But that's not a realistic response. And so what the team is saying is, how could we progressively move through the higher priority ones, which is where they've come to the figure of the 90,000. So it's kind of not directly comparable, if that makes sense. It's a spend this is a risk. If we had 5 go down, it wouldn't be 300, it could be 500,000 in a year. We just don't know.
And presumably it could be 2,000 per, and presumably we're also charging the owners for.
Absolutely, Ben. And so if we can get money, we do. Unfortunately, the sort of vessels that go down are people that don't have any money. But equally, if there's $500,000 worth.
Can I stop you there?
Sorry,
we've had this presented to us. We're going back over ground that is. To me, it's a fairly clear, simple business case to be proactive in this space, and it's $90,000. Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. It's a bit frustrating if people don't come to workshops. When we workshop this,
came to that workshop, I fully understood it. It's not clearly set out in the agenda.
Ben, I'll leave it. Yeah, thanks.
When we had this workshop, there was a discussion about increasing the levy on mooring owners and also maybe extending it to berthing, which maybe is a bit more problematical. Has that been progressed? And if so, what is the outcome?
So short answer, not progressed because they don't have the tools to do so. The ability for us to charge a mooring holder a fee because somebody else's vessel might go down, we don't have the legislative ability to do that. What I think Chris, the Harbour Master, was saying would be ideal is if there would be some sort of a registration fee, like you have a car registration fee, that would have to come through the Crown. The collective Harbour Masters been asking the Crown to do that for some time. The Crown doesn't want to go there, which puts us in this position where we end up being responsible for the safe management of our waterways because the Crown has delegated that through to regional councils.
I understand the issue, but it would be nice if somebody had said to us, hey, look, this is what we need to do so that we can actually put some pressure on the minister responsible to try and get the legislation changed so that there is a means of recovering this on a proactive basis rather than trying to reactively collect it from people who are probably not even alive. These boats get left. So I understand the problem. I just want to find a way to solve it. So
agreed.
If somebody can let us know, we'll do what we can to lobby whoever's responsible.
Robbie?
I agree with Chris there, but just in our policy, we're supposed to be drawing up some bylaws in the future. Maybe we could stick it in that we could, of recouping our money somehow. I don't know, but I think that's something to maybe investigate. Support, I think, get on with this is one we should support and just move on. I'm sorry, Ben, I understand your frustrations, but this is going to become a real issue with older craft that's sitting in Coromandel and Thames and a lot of places in the next 10 to 15 years that if we don't deal with it now, it's not going to cost 90 grand, it's going to cost millions.
I think the key to it is that it's a proactive stance. We're putting some investment in it to hopefully get slightly ahead. We all know it's a massive problem up in Auckland and around the country. So it's just something staff have come to us to try and give us a proactive way forward. So thank you. So I've just checked with Dave. There's another 20 slides. How are councillors? Can I get a feeling, Janine, on how much is left? I just whether we stop now and we come back for 2 hours tomorrow, or we battle on. I still have 3 councillors online, and I have councillors in the chamber. So I'm just trying to trying to get a feel on timing that's left. I know how long's a piece of string, but
Yeah, so through the chair,
to be sure.
I'm going to be in surround sound. We've got this activity. It was restarting. Sorry, I can't, there we go. It sorted itself out. We've got SPY, which there's really no change in there. And then we've got the corporate activities. We've covered a number of those in terms of inflationary drivers. There is one strategic investment proposal that's included in there. And then I think it's a recap of where we've got to.
So that sounds to me like 20 minutes. Would that be?
I'm down with 20 minutes if councillors can hang in there for that point.
Righto, let's give it a go. Let's run with it. So we still have Keith Tiburon-Mokal online. Yeah. Tracy.
Sorry, new password. Afternoon, councillors. Lucky last of the goers. We're on page 236. Dave, not much to see on that slide. Next slide, thanks. Excellent. A couple of matters I just want to highlight on page 236, paragraph TT. Roman numeral I talks about an increase, because we don't have page numbers, I don't know if you're aware, talks about an increase to fund the annual regional greenhouse gas emissions inventory. Just want to clarify that that isn't an increase in funds, it's net zero, it's a transfer from another cost centre into a SPY cost centre. It is fulfilling our statutory requirements under the Climate Change Response Act. Councillors previously asked this at the previous annual plan workshop and also at our most recent strategic direction workshops. We are still required as a reporting organisation to undertake the work. What the OAG clarified is that it doesn't necessarily have to be reported in our annual report. That is a contribution that we pay to a Waikato Regional Council local government syndicate, which has actually come down. Karen will correct me if I'm wrong, but has actually reduced in the last couple of years because of more councils joining that syndicate. We've talked about the peat business case, and we will bring back to you the information that you're after there, which contributes, which is a main contributor up at the top to that increase of what looks to be 415,000 for the Environmental and Science Cost Centre. Other contributions there relate to inflationary pressures and also includes that transfer over from another cost centre. Greg mentioned the work that we are doing with ICM in terms of looking for those cost savings. So there is a reduction in cost there for environmental monitoring. Part of that is the 100K that was transferred over from ICM for labour, which is that net zero saving of 179 from moving that monitoring in-house. The additional saving there is bullet point 3 up on the board, which relates to the Healthy Waterways business case that Councillor Dunbar-Smith was going to raise. So that Healthy Waterways business case is across the organisation and our response. It was also crafted 3 or 4 years ago when the statutory requirements were more than what we anticipate they will be in the next year. In response to that and the additional number of FTEs that we sought in the LTP, we've reduced that by 2. There are still 2 FTEs that remain for the 26-27 annual plan. We are loath to take those out too early, but we should have certainty, I would say, in the first quarter forecast that you'll see going into 26-27, and we will have clarity of what we're doing there. The other thing that I would just like to raise under the healthy business case, healthy waterways business case is just in the last couple of weeks, we spent some time reviewing the policy program, effectively what work we need to carry on doing, what we should be pausing and what we need to start, based on the, I guess, first flush of what we're seeing with the new legislation. So plan change 1 and whatever that may bring, the regional coastal plan appeals, plan change to the RPS we will carry on doing. We will carry on participating in the Waikato District Plan appeals and also Waitomore District Plan appeals. What we have paused doing, and we are not creating any additional spend or no additional contracts, and these are all statutory requirements. An RPS review, our RPS MPS highly productive land plan change that under statute it's saying we should be progressing. We've popped that on a pause. Our freshwater policy review popped on a pause. Regional plan review for our land, air, water and geothermal chapters popped on a pause. Our air quality strategy popped on a pause, and our private plan change for our kawhia marine farmers who have elected to go to the fast track process. So we've popped those on a pause, but we will be reviewing those in the next couple of months to understand what we need to do in order to meet the new statutory requirements of notifying a spatial plan within 15 months and then a natural environment plan within 9 months of that. We also have, as a result of that, some funds that are sitting in 25-26 year that we would likely look for council approval to carry over into 2026-27. My intention, as I've got there in the last bullet point, is not to ask for further funding in 26-27 to respond to incoming missiles from Wellington, but to repurpose and reprioritise existing budgets. That's me.
Thank you, Tracy. Questions, Ben?
Yes, 2 things. One, for Stratton Poll, it would be useful to get a list of what's on hold, the RPS review and those sorts of things, and your spatial planning as you get closer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, once we've sorted that with the project team, it was my intention to bring a report outlining again the risks and the pros and cons to strategy and policy. Yep.
Fine. And the 1.66 million in 26-27 budget,
Sorry,
is it like
what page are you on?
page 250?
Yep.
Yeah, it's in your business case.
Yep.
For healthy waterways.
Mm-hmm.
There's 1.66 million in there. If it is not needed, what happens to that money? And do you anticipate needing 1.6 million in the coming year?
It is likely that there will be a reduction of that. For me, it was a bit too early to say what that reduction would be when we don't know what's coming through in the legislation, but it will not be at the level. So we've already taken out a couple of hundred by virtue of reducing the FTEs. Until we get that legislation, which will land with its I's dotted and T's crossed the end of June, around July, we will have the clarity then. But yeah, and what will happen with that money in our first quarter forecast, we would say this is what we need.
Right. So there may be some additional surplus sitting there if it's not all used.
Potentially, yes. The crystal ball is just too opaque at the moment to make that guess, to provide you with a guess that I could actually sit here and back up.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Tracy. There's no other questions. Thank you very much. Corporate and management.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will run this through. I've got John come and grab a seat. Thank you for joining me. Next slide, please, Dave. There's a number of these matters that we have sort of canvassed through the discussions already today, but we'll just run through them and take any further questions. In terms of the LTP, as we talked about, the first market review of the lease on this building is due this year. And so we've had that provided for in the LTP. At the moment, we're sticking with that assumption until we've actually been through that process with our landlord. So that's the LTP stuff. Next slide, please, Sue. In terms of changes through to the annual plan, predominantly driven, that's why John's here, through the information services budget, across a number of things. Some of it just the inflationary drivers of our software licensing costs, so 260,000 for that. But additional expenditure also going into areas that are really supporting the moves that we're making around artificial intelligence, utilising those sort of emerging technologies within our enterprise systems. So, for example, the Infor Velocity Suite of 50,000, that gives us access to all of their generative AI capability. But to be able to really make use of that, we do need some support and advice in how we can be, where the best opportunities for that are. Additional co-pilot licensing. Again, we have, I think, just over 50 current full co-pilot licenses, and so they have been piloted. We had some stats that John presented to the Finance and Performance Committee about the extensive use of AI co-pilot within the organisation already, so we're just looking to continue that. New payroll solution that went live last Friday the 13th, and it's all good. It wasn't a Black Friday, so we've crossed that line. And our enterprise data catalogue, which is in conjunction with our spatial information team. Next slide, thanks, Dave. Outside of the IS space, we have just some general cost increases in terms of our fleet management service provision, inflation over all of our leases, and associated costs for our regional offices. But offsetting that, we've had the release of 110,000 of a budget that was held for council-controlled organisations that's no longer required. Probably the new area of investment, next slide, thanks, Dave. A strategic investment proposal in terms of short-term resourcing for the enterprise data strategy that council has in place. And so I think if we think about our increasingly digital future, the ability to actually use emerging technology, including AI, there are some baseline conditions that we need as an organisation, and that's really understanding our data and governing and storing that well. We need to be really clear on our business processes, and so we've got some move some resource around to support that business process governance activities happening as well. And so the enterprise data strategy is really the way of bringing all of this together in a way that we are effectively supporting, as it says up there, that data sourcing, the management and governance over the long term. So we understand what data we have, who's responsible for it, how it's being governed. Is it required? Because obviously storage, as we get more data, storage gets more expensive. So we can actually be curating the right data, but having confidence in it. I'll just note that the original strategic investment proposal for this, I think in the December budget that was presented to council, was a request for over 400,000, I think it was 455,000 to support this work. We have looked internally within Customer and Corporate Services Directorate, and I guess since that's been brought together, at reprioritising some roles, at least in the short term, to focus in on this area, meaning that we've reduced that request from the 455 down to 150 for some contracted expertise to come in and make sure that we're on track to deliver this work.
Right, we'll go to questions, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. I guess more a general comment and also a question for both Janine and John. In general, I'm absolutely in support of funding that's required to go into maintaining and enhancing the systems we've got. Once you get on the treadmill, the IT treadmill, there's no getting off it, and it's a question of just managing the way forward. I guess I'm more concerned about where the organisation is going to be, say, in 5 years' time, vis-a-vis whatever else might be incorporated in here or taken out of here. So I'd want to make sure that whatever investment decisions we're making are proofed for the future. So we're not going to go and contemplate making decisions on investment in something which envisages we're going to be an organisation twice the size we are now, because that may not happen. So, and nobody knows, we don't have crystal balls, but I just want to ensure that the decision-making is being driven consciousness that we may not, as an organisation, be on the same trajectory as we are at the moment. Bearing in mind, absolutely support spending on maintaining and enhancing our current systems with a view to making the ship go faster on less fuel. I don't know whether that makes sense or not.
Does. Yeah, I'll try and cover that. Thank you. Yeah, the budget we've put forward is really based on continuing to deliver and support the platforms we have. And when I presented to Finance and Performance Committee last week, pointing out that we have a robust set of enterprise class solutions. So they're in place, they're highly scalable should we need it, but this budget is assuming current state. Apart from the items that have been identified where we're seeking to leverage those platforms, particularly in the space of process optimization and artificial intelligence, as well as the work being done on our enterprise data strategy. So it's the budget put forward isn't anticipating that we're going to be doubling in size over 5 years or significant growth, but those platforms are scalable to absorb growth should we need it. That will come at a cost, though, in terms of increased licensing if our numbers grow.
Okay, and I'd just like to acknowledge the fact that you've reprioritised some of the spending. 400,000 previously, we're down to 50 now, you know, and that's certainly appreciated. So I'm 100% supportive of direction of travel.
Thanks, Chris. Ben.
Yes, three things. On page whatever it is, under corporate management, business sustainability was 91,000 and has now gone to 282,000. But corporate sustainability, which was at 137, has disappeared. And I presume, has corporate sustainability now become part of business sustainability?
I can answer that one. Yeah, we closed that cost centre. There were two running. They were inherited from years and years ago. Right. So we collapsed them. There is, in fact, no additional ask across those cost posts. It's simply the reallocation of labour, and with that comes the corporate overhead attachment as well.
Good. Over the page was just looking at the lease costs, and a note here, there is a risk that the current budget provision will not be sufficient to meet the market increase. Mm-hmm. Two things. One, is it a problem that we signal what amount money we've got in our annual plan so the market knows what that is, and will we be reporting back if it exceeds what how we'll report back?
So through the chair, that was the conversation we had before, that staff are taking independent advice in terms of what that market rent should be. So yep, there's a budget provision there, but we're actually, we have got, I think, 3 pieces of advice in terms of what the market indications are now, so that when we're entering a conversation with the landlord, we're informed from where the market's at, and that will be the determinant of any negotiation.
And yes, I'm supportive of the enterprise data case at 150. I originally come in at 450,000. I suspect that the ghostly presence of Chris Hughes has been floating through the organisation.
Through the chair, I think that's just as we've been working through the reformation of the Customer and Corporate Services Directorate, of where priorities lie, and some vacancies have created a short-term opportunity to actually just move some resource into this space, which is deemed to be a high priority from the perspective.
Janine, just a question around, and it's actually ZZ. I don't know how they get there, but anyway, council controlled organisations budget of 110,000 is being removed out, but what did that service?
So through the chair, that was previously a contribution into CoLab, I believe, but we've consolidated all of those costs into the chief executive's budget so that we can actually have better organisational oversight of it. That budget should have been released to offset that when we did that. So no impact.
Just picking on Chris Hughes' point, John, I am really looking forward to seeing some efficiencies come out of this enterprise data strategy. I quickly had a look at the platforms that I'm aware of, and I got to 13 across just what I'm aware of. So any efficiency in that space, and whether they're now derelict or not, and that will be look forward to. So thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, that's sort of the run through in terms of all of the business areas. We have got information in there around FTEs and capital expenditure, but I'm not sure whether councillors want to go there or not. Otherwise, we can, as I say, I've got just a couple of slides where I've been capturing the discussion points through the day in terms of matters raised that need to come back at some point in time. As well as where we are sitting from a budget position now.
Did anyone have any questions around those FTEs, capital expenditure?
I have one question.
I'll
probably get shot down very quickly. Is there provision in here anywhere for motor Karaka? And Greg, you might want to answer that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. So in 26-27, we have $1 million allocated for investigation and design.
Which means, when would you anticipate you'd be able to deliver? It's like that's long-term plan, is it?
Yes, it will be a long-term plan consideration. It's also subject to developing up an agreed project plan with the community reference group.
So if I could have said to that, Greg, I understand that you've put money into the capital program budgets for ICMC to consider. With it, so there's procurement of pumps.
In out years, yes. Beyond 26,
and
27.
For ICMC to determine whether that's the pace of what they want that capital program to be or not.
Okay, so
it isn't budget.
It's progressing. Okay, thank you.
You weren't shot at all. Ben,
I just want to talk about fees and charges. Were there on that?
Yep.
Okay, so it seems to be that we've got probably $5 almost on every fees and charges this year come for next year. Page 284, one place. So is that an inflation adjustment? Is it something that's going to happen every year in terms of fees and charges, or is it once every 3 years we do these?
So through the chair, we review our schedule of fees and charges every year. I think the $5 rates will be inflationary. In terms of the consent holder charges, that is based on the actual costs for the delivery of the program. There's a funding proportion of that that is picked up by fees and charges, and then it's spread over the number of consents that we hold or are projecting to hold for each of those charge classes.
I just had one question about large dams within the Waikato Hydro Network. We only charge $11,000 per dam, which seems quite cheap. Is there a given electricity charges and electricity companies, is there any need to upgrade that?
So through the chair, we're quite restricted in the way that we can actually set these charges, which is on the actual and reasonable costs attributable to a consent holder for the work that we're doing. So we don't have an unlimited ability to set a fee. The charges are set under the current RMA.
Right, a bit of a
Okay.
roundup.
I'm done. Cool. I will just share my better than AI. You got me, Robbie. Okay, so this is just, oh shoot,
No.
that one. What's it doing? Down here. Okay. So these are just my notes that I've been capturing through the meeting in terms of matters raised that are